welcome to another episode. And as always, we start out by looking at the economic calendar. And the first thing you should notice, you can see we have CPI on Wednesday this week. Therefore, our focus for CPI weeks will be on the days after CPI or CPI day as well, so the second half of the week. And we will skip Monday with no news on Monday, also no news on Tuesday, so the majority of the weekly expansion range should be seen on Wednesday going into Friday, right? So last week we had quite a large expansion day on Friday, right? We have seen quite a large range day into our daily order block right here, which we managed to close above, but then got back below, and then you could see how we got a retracement from that level back to the sell side and also back into the discount of the daily leading range, right? And now, after we have seen 2 weeks of reaccumulation to the downside and a retracement, we now finally got displacement to the upside, which should set the stage for higher prices, and therefore our weekly bias will be bullish for this week. Also, if we take a look at the monthly candle, right, we had the monthly candle open right here. So if we mark out that line, we can see that we had monthly open, and we then got the retracement to the downside, taking out the sell side. And now again, if we think about the open, low, high, close concept, right? So we have the monthly open right here, the open, and now we ideally, if we are bullish for the month, right, or for the week, on all higher time frame candles, we can apply the same concept. In this case, we are obviously bullish. We had the open, and now we have seen the low being formed, right? Or we anticipate the low to be formed because we have seen displacement from our high time frame level. If you remember, we also had the weekly inversion fair value gap aligning with this level here. So we now ideally form the low here, and now we want to see the expansion into the equal highs right here. So open, low, and then we want to see the high that performed, and then we want to see the close, right? So this would be the open, low, high, and then the monthly close, right? And now we pretty much want to play this week the expansion of the monthly candle. So those are ideal higher time frame conditions, right? We have the daily buy program being aligned with the monthly or weekly higher time frame for liquidity, and we've also seen displacement. And now ideally what we want to see here, we have, as I said, in a daily bearish order flow, once we get a close above the up close candles, they should then act as support, right? So we have this up close candle here, we've closed above, so now we want to see the upper half of this being used as support here, right? And then once again, if we get a close above this bearish order block right here, we then want to use this one to send prices into the equal highs here, and then eventually into the weekly highs inside our weekly volume imbalance, right? So now we're about to open the new week, and we want to see how Monday is trading, right? If Monday is being able to push above, or is Monday consolidating here, or giving a retracement back into this range here. We also have a small fair value gap here on the H1 and another one here as well on the H4 obviously. And now we want to see how is the week opening up, right? So we opening up, we trade into this upper H1 fair value gap, and now we want to see how Monday is trading, right? We quite did not tag this lower fair value gap yet, and we now want to see how Monday is trading, right? And there we go. We now have New York session taking out the London lows into our fair value gap here. So, as I told you, Monday will either be a consolidation profile or a retracement profile, and for now it seems like we have a retracement profile, right? And there we go. We now got a bullish reaction out of this H1 fair value gap after taking out London lows, and we also trading in the upper half of this bullish mitigation block here, right? And now we also, as you can see, we were able to close above this daily bearish order block, and now we want to see if we can get a daily close above this level here as well, right? And there we go. We have the daily close right here, and as you can see, we have been able to, or we managed to close above this daily bearish order block here, right? And now at this point we have a new higher time frame PUI, right? We now don't want to see prices to trade below this level here again. So now this level here is our higher time frame PUI to look for longs, right? So we again wait for the Asian session to close, and now we can wait what London session is doing, right? We can take some shorts here, right, into this level, or we simply wait for price to come to us and then take longs here according to the daily order flow. But again, we're trading above Monday highs. We have all of those lows here, trendline liquidity, right? So we might also can get some shorts here in London session, and then see a continuation from the higher time frame daily level we've talked about. So we have an Asia high rate right here, pre-London session, and then we have seen a sell-off here, right? Again, I don't really trust the pre-London session rates, as I've talked about many times already, and as you can see, that's why I don't like them. London open, and we take out those pre-London session highs one more time, and now we want to see if we can get maybe now a lower time frame shift in order flow, and then we could aim for the Asian session lows. And also on the H1 we have a small fair value gap here, which is aligning with the daily inversion order block, right, a mitigation block here. So we could also aim potentially for this H1 fair value gap here. And if we go back to the M15, we now want to see how price is reacting above the Asian highs and also above the New York open, right? Can we make that line purple? So the New York midnight opening price. Again, if we are bearish or if you want to look for shorts during London session, we always want to put an eye on the New York midnight opening price, to then ideally look for short entries above the New York open or slightly below, to then enter some short positions, right? So let's go down to the M5 to get some more detailed view on price action, right? And we can see here we got a retracement here, and we now want to see if we can find some lower time frame confirmation or entry pattern, right? At this point you can see we have this bullish order block right here, and we also have this small fair value gap here, which we have almost closed below. Ideally, I want to see price to get below here, and then I want to see some sort of entry, right? So you can see for now the mean threshold of this M5 order block is holding, and also taking out this short-term low here. So for now there's nothing interesting to get into shorts, but now again we did not close below, so for now we're just consolidating here, and now we got the close below the fair value gap here, right, and also below this order block. So we could now at this point argue that we have a shift in order flow here, right? Also on the M15, also closing here, and got another close here. So at this point I will enter a short trade here. I will put my limits at the lows of this mitigation block, right, bearish mitigation block, and then stops above this high here, so an 8-point stop, and then our first TP would be the Asian lows, would be in this case a 1.56R trade. Again, we don't take profits before 2R, right? So in this case we would put our stops to break even after we take out the Asia lows, and then we either get stopped at break even, or we get our TP at around 2R here, or we can hold for the H1 fair value gap for a 3.8R trade. And now we want to see if we can get a fill here, right? So we got a fill here. You can see we trade right into the mean threshold of this mitigation block, and now we want to see prices to stay below the inversion fair value gap, and also ideally inside the mitigation block. And you can see we are kinda consolidating here in the lower half of this mitigation block, but that's fine as long as we don't get a close back above the midnight open. We are being bearish, and we can hold on to our short position here. So we can see it's a really choppy price action. Again, we have no news today, so therefore the price action is kinda delayed, and not really, you don't really see fast expansions, right? But that's to be expected on a day without any news ahead of CPI, so we have to stay patient here in this case. And now we have to trade below the Asian lows, and again, as I mentioned, we now will move our stops to break even, right? So at this point we are risk free in our trade. We either get stopped for break even, right, or we hit our TP here at the H1 fair value gap. And now we also have London session being closed here, right? We have London lunch hours now, and we want to see if we can get the New York session to be a continuation of London session, right? And then trade into the sell side here, which is aligning with, again, our daily mitigation block. So again, stops are still at break even. Got a retracement here. Now we want to see if we get stopped out, or if we can actually see a continuation here. We technically could enter another short here, although it's lunch hours, but for me, I would personally not add another trade here. We have here a run of buy side, then we have another shift in order flow here on the M5. You can see we close below this small M5 order block here, so we have an M5 breaker here. So just for studying purposes, we could enter another trade here. You can see we've also would have gotten a limit entry here, got a close here, and then a retest of this breaker block. So we could have entered another short here, but again, it's ahead of the New York Open, so it's not a trade I would be taking, as we're already in a short here, and again we have CPI tomorrow, but just for price action studies purposes, we would now take a look if this trade will actually work out. So we have New York open here, and we here would have hidden TP of our London session trade, and we would also have hit the TP of the price action study test trade kinda, right? And now we are basically trading at our higher time frame level where we want to look for longs, right? But again, time of the day, we have New York session and we're late in the day, so we will probably see some accumulation here in this upper half of this mitigation block, and then tomorrow you want to ideally see expansion from this level here, right? So we go to the M15 again, and as I've mentioned, we have been accumulating here or consolidating here a bit after trading into the H1 fair value gap and also the mitigation block on the daily, right? So you can see we have been getting retracement into the daily close, right? So this is supporting our bullish idea, and we now again want to wait for the Asian session to play out, and you can see we have a trending Asia session, right? So this means London session is a low probability, and also we have CPI in New York session, so therefore we don't want to trade London anyways, and we want to trade the New York session, right? Again, we can trade news on the higher time frames, or we can wait for the lower time frames, for a lower time frame entry once the news have been released. So we skip London session, right? As you can see, 14 pip range London session. That's not what you want to trade or engage in. And we now also wait for the New York session again. Let's take a look at the H1 or the H4. So on the H4 we have this H4 dealing range here, right? And we have this H4 fair value gap here, right? And then we also have on the H1 we have a breaker block here, right? So we have again PD area alignment, we have an inversion level here, right? The H1 breaker, we have the H4 fair value gap here as well, and we now want to see if we can get a bullish reaction out of this range here, right? So we have New York session here, and we are trading at our higher time frame level here as well, and now we want to see if we can get a lower time frame confirmation here, right? So we have taken out some minor sell side here of this low, right? And we have all this trend line liquidity here on the lower time frames, and what we can see here now, we have been trading right into the mean threshold of the H4 fair value gap and as well as the H1 breaker, right? And now you can see we have indeed an M5 shift in order flow here, right? We have been closing above this bearish fair value gap, and we've also closed above this M5 order block here, right? So we've disrespected two bearish PD arrays, and it seems like we can hold that level here, that inversion level, right? And now ideally we want to see prices to trade higher here, right? Again, I told you we don't want to trade, or we don't want to place trades ahead of news on the lower time frames, or at least on the high impact news such as CPI, FOMC or NFP, right? But we can take a trade here, and then I would put my stops based on a higher time frame invalidation level. So for example below the H1 breaker here. So you could say you could enter somewhere in this area here, right? So let's say we are entering at the top of the breaker here on the M5, and then we put our stops. Let's say we use a fixed stop of 20 pips, which is then also below the H1 breaker and below the H4 fair value gap, and then we could say, okay, we are expecting price to trade into the equal highs here, right, on the daily. So we put our TP here, so this is 70 pips away from the current prices, which is a reasonable target for such a news event as CPI. And now we have CPI coming out in the next 15 minutes. So let's see how we can how we are trading on CPI. So CPI is coming out here, and CPI, as I mentioned in the PDF as well in the ebook, is usually a really one-sided news event. So the news gets released and we straight away see price heading into one direction, not like a manipulation and then a true move. So CPI gets released, and then we most of times we see usually straight away price heading into the true direction, right? So now we can say we move our stops to break even here, right? As if we are bullish now, we should not retrace back to break even, so we can move stops to break even here. And we have this fair value gap here now, and now you want to see this fair value gap being respected and sending prices higher, right? And there we go. We could here take off either the entire position here, or we could take some partials and then leave some runners for the weekly high, right, which is in the weekly volume imbalance. So we could take the majority off here at 3.6R and then leave a runner for the weekly buy side liquidity, right? So let's go back on the M15, and we now want to see how we are trading into the daily close, right? And there we have the daily close, right? And you can see we kept expanding, right? And if we take a look at the daily chart as well, we also were able to close above the buy side here, right? Which is a really good sign for bullish continuation into our weekly level here, right? So now we wait now again what the Asian session is doing, and as expected after such an expansion we've seen here a consolidation here, and we now want to wait for London session again. So we have London session trading below the Asian lows right here, and we now want to see, technically you could long here, right? We have Asia session lows here, we have New York lows here, New York midnight opening price here as well. We have the shift in order flow, but again, because we have seen a large expansion here, I don't really want to long here anymore. Also, we still have our partials from here, right? We've taken something off here and we're still holding our partials, so if we go higher we are still profiting from our long position from yesterday. And you can see we have a bullish order flow here, and let's say you've entered here on the, for example, on the M15, you can see it's not the cleanest price action. We had this propulsion block here which we've closed below, but the order block was able to hold prices, right? You can see the upper half is holding, and now we also have on the M5 again. We have this breaker here, right? All of this is a breaker, and inside the breaker we also have an inversion fair value gap. You can see we hold above, and we have a short-term run of stops here, and then we close above. So you could play a continuation here, but again we are already trading above the New York Open, and we are overextended on the higher time frames, and we also close to our buy side target, right? So I would not really take any trades here, although you could, let's say, you could enter here on this fair value gap, put your stops below the strong low, right? It's a strong low because that's taking liquidity from this weak low here, right? So you could enter a trade here and then aim for the weekly buy side, right? Which would be a 2.7R trade. And you can see it's really a choppy price action here, right? And now we have New York Open, and we then trade into this level here, and also the level where we would close our remaining position from yesterday, right? So this would be an 8R trade. Obviously we've taken partials here, so it's less than 8R, but yeah, depending on how many partials you take and how much you left running, right? It's still a decent week, right? We had some shorts here, then longs here, so overall a really good week. We trade into the higher time frame liquidity pool, so we expect a consolidation before we then either get a retracement of the higher time frame order flow or a continuation, right? Also, this dotted line right here is the mean threshold of the weekly volume imbalance, right? So our trading for the week would be done here, although Friday would be a tradable day according to the news calendar, right, the economic calendar, but because we have to trade into a key level and taking our liquidity, and we've also been overextending on the higher time frame, we don't want to trade on Friday. And now you might ask, but why don't we play the Friday T-chip setup? Why? Because if we trade the Friday T-chip setup, we want to see the Thursday the Thursday New York session, or in general the Thursday price action, to show already the first signs of a possible change in order flow in the lower time frames. But as you can see, we don't have that here. So therefore we also don't really expect a retracement profile on Friday, but most likely a consolidation profile around that level here. And again, we don't want to engage in consolidation profiles, so therefore we already would be done with our trading for the week. And as you can see, we also have a consolidation profile then on Friday, right? So nothing you would be interested in, right? And then we also have the weekly close here, and now we've pretty much finished our weekly or daily buy program, right? We are now trading at our higher time frame level for a possible reversal of the trend, or maybe we also get a continuation. Again, we want to see how price is closing on the week here, on the daily. Are we able to close above this level here, get me back down below, and then we will act accordingly how the daily order flow is setting up. But again, we are now expecting some days of consolidation here, right? How we will determine a shift in order flow on the daily here to then either get a continuation here, right? We flip that level, go higher, or if we get a retracement and then the downside scenario, this will be then the topic of the upcoming election.